The message came from deep space on a Tuesday morning. Commander Jake Morrison was drinking his coffee in the command center of the USS Defender when the computer started screaming. The signals were unlike anything humans had ever seen before. "Sir, we're getting something strange," said Dr. Lisa Park, the ship's science officer. She was staring at her screen with wide eyes. "This isn't from Earth. This isn't from anywhere we know." Jake put down his coffee and walked over to her station. The screen showed patterns of light and sound that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. But there was something else in the signal, something that made his skin crawl. "Can you make sense of it?" he asked. Lisa worked for several hours. The signal was complex, but slowly she began to understand it. The patterns were language. The sounds were words, and the message they carried made her hands shake. "Jake," she said quietly, "I think someone is asking for help." The full message took 3 days to decode. When they finally understood it completely, Jake immediately sent it to Admiral Kate Sullivan on Earth. Within hours, she was on a ship, heading to meet them. The message was from something called the Galactic Harmony Council. It was a group of 7 different alien species who lived together in peace among the stars. They had been watching Earth for the past 50 years, ever, since humans first started sending radio signals into space. But they were dying. Something called the Void Swarm was killing them. It had already destroyed 3 of their homeworlds. Billions of alien lives were gone. The remaining 4 worlds would be next, and soon. The aliens had tried everything they could think of. They had built bigger shields. They had moved their people to safer places. They had even tried to talk to the Void Swarm, hoping to find peace. Nothing worked. The mechanical monsters just kept coming, eating everything in their path like hungry insects. That was when they made a terrible discovery about Earth. The aliens had always known that humans lived on an unusual planet. But when they studied it closer, they were horrified. Earth was what they called a Class 12 death world. Most planets where intelligent life grew were safe and peaceful. Gentle weather, calm seas, and friendly animals. The aliens came from worlds like this. They had never known real danger or pain. They had never needed to fight for their lives. But Earth was different. Earth was a nightmare. Earthquakes that could level cities, storms that could destroy entire countries, volcanoes that could block out the sun, animals that hunted other animals for food. Disease and death were everywhere. The aliens could not understand how anything could live on such a terrible world. Yet humans had not just lived. They had grown strong. The aliens were scared of humans. They called them Deathworlders, beings who had learned to kill in order to survive. In their peaceful minds, humans were monsters. But they were monsters who knew how to fight, and fighting was exactly what the aliens needed. Admiral Sullivan arrived, on the USS Defender with a small fleet. She was a tough woman who had served in 3 wars. Her gray hair was pulled back tight, and her eyes were sharp like a hawk's. She read the alien message twice before speaking. "So they want our help," she said. "These peaceful aliens want the scary humans to save them." "That's about right," Jake said. "They're terrified of us, but they're more terrified of dying." The aliens had sent coordinates for a meeting place. It was a space station called Haven, far from Earth. They wanted to talk face to face if humans were willing to help. "What do you think?" Jake asked. Sullivan was quiet for a long moment. She looked out at the stars through the command center window. Somewhere out there, entire worlds full of people were dying. People who had never hurt anyone. People who just wanted to live in peace. "I think," she said slowly, "that we're about to find out what humans are really made of." The journey to Haven Station took 2 weeks. During that time, more messages came from the aliens. Each one was more desperate than the last. The Void Swarm was moving faster than expected. Another world had fallen. Millions more were dead. Dr. Park worked day and night to learn the alien language better. She discovered that the aliens communicated not just with words, but with emotions. They could feel each other's thoughts and feelings. When one alien was sad, they all felt sad. When one was afraid, they all felt afraid. "No wonder they can't fight," Lisa told Jake. "Imagine feeling the pain of everyone you hurt. Imagine feeling the fear of everyone around you during a battle. They would go crazy." But we don't work that way, Jake said. No. We can block out emotions when we need to. We can do terrible things to protect the people we love. That's what makes us dangerous. That's also what might make us their salvation. As they got closer to Haven Station, the aliens sent more information about themselves. There were the Zephyrians, who looked like giant butterflies and could live for 1,000 years. The Builders, who were like living rocks and could shape metal with their minds. The Singers, whose voices could heal sickness and calm storms. The Watchers, who could see across vast distances and predict the future. All of them were incredibly advanced. Their technology was beyond anything humans had ever dreamed of. They could travel between stars in days instead of years. They could create matter from pure energy. They could even bring the dead back to life. But none of them had ever thrown a punch. Haven Station appeared on their screens like a jewel floating in space. It was beautiful beyond words, made of crystal and light. Ships moved around it like graceful dancers, never bumping into each other, never making harsh movements. It's like a fairy tale, Lisa whispered. Jake nodded. It was beautiful. It was peaceful, and if they failed to help, it would soon be nothing but empty space and floating debris. The USS Defender docked with Haven Station carefully. The aliens had built a special area just for humans, with the right air and gravity. As Jake and Lisa walked through the corridors, they saw their first aliens through thick windows. They were nothing like the monsters from human movies. The Zephyrians really did look like butterflies, with wings that shimmered in colors that had no names. The Builders moved slowly and carefully, their rock-like bodies glowing with soft light. Everything about them spoke of gentleness and peace, and everything about them screamed that they had never faced real danger in their entire lives. That Ambassador Zethkalar was waiting for them in the main meeting room. He was one of the Builders, tall as a human but twice as wide, with skin like polished stone. When he spoke, his voice sounded like distant thunder. "Welcome, humans from the Death World Earth," he said. His words were careful and formal, but Jake could hear the fear underneath them. "We are grateful that you answered our call, even though we know you must think us weak and foolish." Jake looked at this being, who could probably build a city with his bare hands, who came from a civilization that had mastered the secrets of the universe, and who was asking for help from a species that still fought wars with bullets and bombs. "We don't think you're weak," Jake said. "We think you're unlucky, and we're here to change that." For the first time in months, Ambassador Zethkalar felt something other than despair. He felt hope. Captain Ryan Hayes arrived at Haven Station 3 days after the first meeting. He brought with him a team of Earth's best military minds and a ship full of weapons that made the aliens very nervous. Ryan was a soldier who had fought in the Mars, colony wars, and the Europa incident. He knew how to kill things that wanted to kill him. Engineer Sam Chen came with Ryan's team. Sam was small and quiet, but he could look at any machine and understand how it worked. More importantly, he could figure out how to break it. The aliens found this talent both amazing and terrifying. The first thing Ryan did was ask to see recordings of the Void Swarm attacks. Ambassador Zethkalar led the human team to a large room with walls made of pure light. The walls showed images and videos like a giant television screen. This was the attack on Verdania Prime, Zethkalar said sadly. It happened 6 months ago. The images showed a beautiful world covered in green forests and blue oceans. Cities floated in the sky like soap bubbles, connected by bridges of light. It looked like paradise. Then the Void Swarm arrived. Ryan had seen many terrible things in his years as a soldier, but this made him feel sick. The swarm looked like a cloud of black metal insects, each one the size of a building. They moved together like a single creature, flowing across the planet's surface like spilled oil. Everything they touched died. Trees, buildings, people. It all got torn apart and eaten. The metal insects grew bigger and stronger with each meal. Within hours, the paradise world became a ball of dead rock floating in space. "How many people live there?" Dr. Lisa Park asked quietly. 4 billion Zephyrians, Zethkalar answered. "All gone." Ryan watched the recording again. He paid attention to how the swarm moved, how it attacked, how it spread across the planet. The aliens had tried to fight back, but their idea of fighting was pathetic. They shot energy beams that barely scratched the metal insects. They built barriers that the swarm tore through like paper. You never tried to ram ships into them? Ryan asked. The aliens looked confused. Ram ships? You mean crash them on purpose? Yeah. Take a big ship, point it at the biggest group of those things, and smash right into them at full speed. Ambassador Zethkalar made a sound like grinding stone. It was the alien version of being shocked. But that would destroy the ship. The crew would die. Sometimes people die in wars, Ryan said simply. Sometimes you have to sacrifice a few to save many. The alien was quiet for a long time. This was a concept his peaceful mind could barely understand. Engineer Sam Chen had been studying the technical data about the void swarm. He pulled up diagrams on his tablet and showed them to the group. These things are like a virus, he said. They eat metal and energy to make copies of themselves. Each one has a simple brain that connects to all the others. Kill a few, and the rest learn from it. They adapt and get harder to kill. So how do we stop them? Jake Morrison asked. Sam smiled, but it was not a nice smile. We don't fight them like a virus. We fight them like cancer. We cut out the infected parts before they can spread, fast, brutal, and complete. The aliens didn't understand what he meant, so Sam explained using simple words. The swarm was like a single giant creature made of many small parts. Cut off the head and the body dies. But first, they had to find the head. Dr. Park had been studying the alien technology, and what she found amazed her. The aliens could do things that seemed like magic. They had machines that could turn dirt into food. They had computers that thought faster than any human brain. They had weapons that could destroy entire moons. Why haven't you won already? She asked scientist Valandra, one of the Zephyrians. Your technology is incredible. Valandra's butterfly wings flickered with sad colors. We have the tools, but not the will. When we try to use our weapons, we feel the pain of everything we destroy. We cannot handle the emotions of war. What about robots? Machines that fight for you? We tried that. But the Void Swarm learns from every battle. It adapts faster than we can build new machines. And our robots are too predictable. They follow patterns. The swarm learns the patterns and defeats them. Ryan nodded. He was starting to understand the problem. You need soldiers who can think, adapt, and surprise the enemy. Soldiers who can feel fear and pain but keep fighting anyway. Yes, Valandra said. Soldiers like humans. General Alex Turner arrived from Earth with a full battle fleet. Unlike the graceful alien ships, the human vessels looked like flying fortresses covered in guns and armor. The aliens watched nervously as dozens of human warships took positions around Haven Station. General Turner was an old man with gray hair and scars on his face. He had fought more battles than anyone else in the human military. When he looked at the recordings of the Void Swarm attacks, his expression never changed. How long do we have? He asked. The swarm is 3 weeks away from here, Ambassador Zethkalar answered. Maybe less. Then we better get to work. Turner called all the human officers together in the USS Defender's briefing room. On the table, he spread out maps of the local star systems. Red marks showed where the Void Swarm had attacked. Blue marks showed where the aliens still lived. Here's what we know, Turner said. The enemy is fast, smart, and gets stronger every time it eats something. The aliens have great technology but can't use it properly because they're too soft-hearted. We have 3 weeks to figure out how to kill something that has already destroyed 3 entire worlds. Captain Hayes raised his hand. What about the alien idea that this thing has a central brain? If we can find it and kill it, does the whole swarm die? Maybe, Turner said. But first we have to survive long enough to find it. And that means teaching our alien friends how to fight. Engineer Chen had been working with the alien technicians to understand their weapons. What he found was both exciting and frustrating. The aliens had energy guns that could cut through solid steel like butter. They had shields that could stop almost any attack. They had sensors that could see through walls and around corners. But they used all these amazing tools like children playing with toys. Look at this, Chen said to Ryan. He showed him an alien fighter ship. It was sleek and beautiful, capable of moving faster than any human craft. This thing could dance circles around our best fighters, but they only use it for transportation and exploration. They never even thought about putting guns on it. Can we fix that? Oh yeah. Give me a week and I'll turn their peaceful little scout ships into something that would make a human pilot cry with joy. Dr. Park spent her time learning about alien psychology. She discovered that the different species experienced emotions in different ways. The Zephyrians felt everything as colors and music. The Builders felt emotions as changes in temperature and pressure. The Singers experienced feelings as different types of harmony, but they all shared one thing. They could not handle the chaos and violence of real combat. It's not that they're cowards, she explained to Jake. It's that their brains are wired differently. Imagine if every time you threw a punch, you felt the pain in your own face. Every time you fired a gun, you heard the screams of everyone around you. That's what it's like for them. So how do we work with that? We don't ask them to become killers. We ask them to become supporters. They handle the technology, the logistics, the planning. We handle the actual fighting. As the days passed, something interesting began to happen. The aliens started watching the humans with a mixture of fear and fascination. They saw Ryan Hayes planning battle strategies that seemed impossible to their peaceful minds. They watched Sam Chen modify their technology in ways they had never imagined. They observed the human soldiers practicing combat drills with a precision and intensity that made their stomachs turn. But they also saw something else. They saw humans who fought, not because they enjoyed killing, but because they wanted to protect others. They saw soldiers who were willing to die to save people they had never met. They saw warriors who cried for the alien children who had already been lost to the Void Swarm. Ambassador Zethkalar spent long hours talking with General Turner. The old human soldier had gentle eyes despite his fierce reputation. He spoke of wars he had fought, friends he had lost, and choices he had made that still haunted his dreams. "Why do you do it?" Zethkalar asked one evening. "Why do you choose to carry such pain?" Turner was quiet for a moment. He looked out at the stars where somewhere in the darkness the Void Swarm was getting closer. "Because someone has to," he said finally. "Because if good people don't fight evil, then evil wins. It's that simple." The alien realized something in that moment. Humans were not monsters. They were guardians who had learned to be monsters when they had to be. There was a difference, and that difference might be the key to survival. 2 weeks remained before the Void Swarm reached Haven Station. The real work was about to begin. Colonel Danny Rodriguez had never trained aliens before. He stood in the middle of Haven Station's largest room, looking at 40 volunteers from different species who wanted to learn how to fight. Most of them were shaking with fear. "Okay, everyone, listen up," Danny said in his calm voice. He was a Special Forces commander who had trained soldiers on 6 different worlds. But those had all been humans. These aliens were something completely new. The volunteers included 12 Zephyrians with their butterfly wings, 8 builders who looked like walking rocks, 10 singers whose voices hummed with nervous energy, and 10 watchers whose large eyes seemed to see everything at once. They all stared at Danny like he was about to eat them. "First lesson," Danny said. "War is not about being mean or cruel. War is about protecting the people you love. Can everyone understand that?" The aliens nodded slowly. This was a concept they could accept. Second lesson. Sometimes protecting people means doing things that hurt your heart. But if you don't do these things, more people will die. That hurt in your heart is the price you pay for saving lives. A young Zephyrian named Kesimar raised one wing. "But how do we stop feeling the pain of others when we fight?" Danny had been working with Dr. Ben Foster, a military psychologist, to answer exactly this question. Ben had studied alien minds for weeks and found some interesting solutions. "You don't stop feeling the pain," Danny said. "You learn to use it. When you feel the fear of your friends, let it make you fight harder to protect them. When you feel the sadness of loss, let it remind you why you cannot give up." The training was slow and difficult. The aliens' bodies were not built for fighting. The Zephyrians were too fragile. The builders were too slow. The singers got distracted by the emotions around them. The watchers could see attacks coming but froze instead of reacting. But Danny was patient. He had trained soldiers who were afraid, soldiers who were angry, and soldiers who didn't want to fight. These aliens were just a new type of challenge. Meanwhile, Captain Maria Santos was working with alien engineers to build new types of fighter ships. Maria was the best pilot in the human fleet, and she had some crazy ideas about how to use alien technology. "Look at this," she said to Engineer Chen, pointing at an alien scout ship. "This thing can stop and turn instantly without hurting the pilot. No human ship can do that." "Yeah, but it's got no weapons and no armor," Sam replied. "So we add weapons and armor, but we keep the crazy maneuverability. Imagine a fighter that can dodge like a hummingbird but hit like a hammer." They worked for days, combining human weapon systems with alien flight technology. The result was something that looked like a metal dragonfly with guns. It was fast, nimble, and deadly. The alien engineers watched in amazement as Maria test flew the hybrid fighter. She pulled moves that should have been impossible, spinning and diving through obstacles that would have destroyed any normal ship. When she fired the weapons, the shots hit targets with perfect accuracy. "How does she do that?" asked Valandra, the Zephyrian scientist. "Practice," Sam said. "Lots and lots of practice, and the willingness to crash a few times while learning." Dr. Ben Foster was having his own successes with the alien volunteers. He discovered that each species needed different mental techniques to handle combat stress. The Zephyrians did best when they thought of fighting as protecting their beautiful worlds from ugly destruction. The builders worked better when they imagined combat as building a wall to keep danger away from their people. The singers found courage by turning their fear into battle songs that gave strength to their allies. The watchers were the hardest to train. They could see everything happening in a battle, which meant they felt overwhelmed by all the pain and chaos. But Ben found that if he taught them to focus on just one person at a time, they could function as excellent coordinators. High Counselor Nimrith watched all of this preparation with mixed feelings. She was the leader of the Harmony Council, an ancient watcher whose eyes had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. She had never imagined that her peaceful alliance would need to learn the art of war. "Are we losing who we are?" she asked General Turner during one of their evening talks. Turner looked out at the training areas where aliens practice combat moves under human instruction. "No," he said. "You're discovering who you can become when you have to be. But we're proud of our peaceful nature. For thousands of years we solved problems with wisdom and cooperation, and those are still your greatest strengths," Turner said. "But now you're adding a new strength, the ability to fight when wisdom and cooperation aren't enough." As the days passed, something amazing began to happen. The aliens started to change. Not in their basic nature, but in their confidence. They walked taller. They spoke with more certainty. They began to believe that they might actually survive. Young Kesimar became the first alien to truly master human combat thinking. During a training exercise, he used a combination of Zephyrian flight ability and human tactical planning to defeat 3 human soldiers in a simulation battle. The humans cheered, and Kesimar's wings glowed with pride. "I felt their fear," he told Danny afterward. "But instead of letting it stop me, I used it to predict where they would go. Fear makes patterns. If you understand the patterns, you can win." Danny smiled. The student was becoming a teacher. Engineer Chen had been working on something special with the alien technicians. They had discovered that the Void Swarm learned from each battle by sharing information between all the individual units. But what if that sharing network could be disrupted? "It's like a computer virus," Chen explained to the group. "We can't stop them from talking to each other, but maybe we can confuse what they're saying." The aliens provided technology that could intercept and modify electronic signals. The humans provided knowledge about how to create false information that would fool enemy computers. Together they built something new, electronic weapons that could make the Void Swarm stupid. "If this works," said Valandra, "their individual units will start making mistakes. They might even attack each other." Captain Santos had trained 12 alien pilots to fly the new hybrid fighters. They weren't as good as human pilots yet, but they were getting better every day. More importantly, they brought abilities that humans didn't have. A watcher pilot could see enemy movements before they happened. A singer pilot could coordinate with teammates through special harmonies that no enemy could intercept. A builder pilot could make repairs to a damaged ship while still flying it. A Zephyrian pilot could make turns and stops that would kill a human. "We're not making them into humans," Maria explained to Jake Morrison. "We're making them into something new, something that combines the best of both our peoples." The hybrid technology wasn't just limited to fighter ships. Human engineers worked with alien scientists to create new types of larger vessels. They built warships that could repair themselves, shields that got stronger when attacked, and weapons that learned from each shot to become more accurate. But the most important development was happening in the minds of the aliens themselves. They were learning to think like warriors while keeping their hearts as protectors. During one training session, a group of alien volunteers worked together to solve a complex tactical problem. They had to rescue civilian ships from a simulated void swarm attack. The solution they came up with was brilliant, combining human aggressive tactics with alien technological sophistication. Dr. Foster watched the exercise and realized something important. "They're not becoming killers," he told Dr. Park. "They're becoming guardians. There's a big difference." With 1 week left before the Void Swarm's arrival, Haven Station had transformed from a peaceful research facility into a military base. But it wasn't like any military base humans had ever seen. Weapons and gardens grew side by side. Combat training happened next to art galleries. Warriors meditated in rooms filled with beautiful music. The aliens had learned to fight, but they had done it without losing their souls. General Turner stood in the command center, looking at reports from all the preparation teams. Human and alien officers worked together at control stations, their different languages mixing into a strange but effective communication system. "Are we ready?" Ambassador Zethkalar asked. Turner looked at the mixed fleet of human and alien ships floating around Haven Station. He watched alien pilots practicing combat maneuvers that would have been impossible a month ago. He listened to the confident voices of species who had been paralyzed by fear just weeks before. "No," he said honestly, "we're not ready. Nobody is ever ready for war. But we're as ready as we can make ourselves, and sometimes that has to be enough." In the distance, long-range sensors detected the first signs of the approaching void swarm. The real test was about to begin. The void swarm arrived like a black storm cloud spreading across the stars. Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the command center of Haven Station, watching the enemy approach on the main screen. The swarm was bigger than anyone had expected. Millions of metal creatures moved together in perfect formation, blotting out the light from distant suns. "How many?" he asked quietly. "Sensors show approximately 3 million individual units," reported Lieutenant Tony Walker from his station. Tony was young, barely 25, but he was one of the best pilots in the human fleet. His hands were steady on the controls even, as he watched certain death approaching. "And how many ships do we have?" 200 human vessels, 150 alien ships, and about 300 of the new hybrid fighters. The numbers were not good. For every one of their ships, the enemy had thousands of units. But Jake had learned something important during his time with the aliens. Sometimes the right strategy mattered more than big numbers. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison." He spoke into the communication system. "Today we fight not just for Haven Station, but for the idea that peaceful people deserve to live in peace. Human and alien crews, remember your training, trust each other, and let's show this swarm what happens when you threaten our friends." The first wave of Void Swarm units hit the outer defense line 20 minutes later. Lieutenant Walker led a squadron of hybrid fighters into the battle, his ship dancing between enemy units like a leaf in the wind. The alien technology let him turn and stop in ways that confused the mechanical enemies. "This is incredible," he shouted over the radio, as he destroyed his fifth enemy unit. "These ships can do things that shouldn't be possible." Behind him flew Kesimar, the young Zephyrian who had learned human combat tactics. His butterfly wings glowed bright blue as he coordinated his attack with Tony's movements. Together, they carved through enemy formations that should have overwhelmed them, but the Void Swarm was learning. After losing several hundred units to the hybrid fighters, the mechanical creatures began to adapt. They changed their attack patterns, moved in tighter groups, and started predicting the fighters' movements. Chief Engineer Rachel Kim worked frantically in the engine room of the USS Defender. The ship was taking heavy damage from enemy attacks, and she had to keep it running with spare parts that weren't designed to work together. She welded alien crystal circuits to human metal cables, creating repairs that looked impossible, but somehow worked. "Kim, we need more power to the shields," Jake's voice came through the intercom. "I'm trying, sir," Rachel shouted back as sparks flew around her. "These alien power crystals are amazing, but they don't like human electrical systems. It's like trying to teach a cat to bark." She had been working with alien engineers for weeks, learning how their technology functioned. Now that knowledge saved lives as she jury-rigged solutions that kept the human ships fighting. The battle raged for hours. The combined fleet used every trick they had learned. Human ships provided heavy firepower while alien vessels used their advanced shields to protect the weaker fighters. The hybrid ships struck fast and hard, then disappeared before the enemy could respond. Engineer Sam Chen's electronic warfare systems began to show results. The virus-like programs he had created were spreading through the Void Swarm's communication network, causing individual units to become confused and disoriented. Some of the mechanical creatures started attacking each other, thinking their own allies were enemies. "It's working," Sam reported excitedly. "Their coordination is breaking down. Look at Sector 7. They're fighting themselves." But the swarm was vast, and it learned quickly. As soon as the electronic attacks were detected, the mechanical creatures began to adapt their communication systems. The confusion lasted only long enough to destroy a few thousand enemy units. In the middle of the battle, something unexpected happened. Warrior scholar Kesimar, who had become the first alien to truly understand human military thinking, made a discovery that changed everything. "Admiral Morrison," his voice came over the radio, "I can see a pattern in their movements. The swarm isn't acting like individuals working together. It's acting like a single creature with many parts." "What does that mean?" Jake asked while dodging enemy fire. "It means there's a central brain somewhere, something that controls all the others. If we can find it and destroy it, the whole swarm might die." Dr. Park, who was coordinating sensor readings from the bridge, began searching for unusual energy signatures in the enemy formation. The swarm looked like a uniform cloud of metal creatures, but there had to be something different about the control unit. "There," she shouted suddenly. "In the center of the formation, there's a structure that's 10 times bigger than the other units, and it's putting out massive amounts of communication signals." The problem was reaching it. The giant control unit was surrounded by hundreds of thousands of smaller creatures, all protecting it like antibodies protecting a virus. Any ship that tried to reach the center would be destroyed long before it got close. That was when Lieutenant Walker came up with a crazy plan. "What if we don't try to fight our way through?" he said over the radio. "What if we use their own tactics against them?" He explained his idea quickly. The Void Swarm moved like a single creature, which meant it had predictable patterns. If they could make the enemy think the biggest threat was coming from one direction, the swarm would move to defend against it. That would create a gap somewhere. "Else it's suicide," Jake said after hearing the plan. "Maybe," Tony replied, "but it's the only chance we have." The plan required volunteers for a suicide mission. 50 ships would attack the strongest part of the enemy formation, drawing all the attention while a small group tried to sneak through the gap to reach the control unit. Every human pilot volunteered immediately. So did most of the aliens, which surprised everyone. "Why?" Jake asked Kesmar. "You're not soldiers, you don't have to do this." The young Zephyrian's wings shimmered with determination. "You taught us that protecting others sometimes means sacrificing yourself. We learned that lesson well." The attack began at dawn, Haven Station time. 50 ships, both human and alien, charged straight into the thickest part of the enemy formation. They fought like heroes from old stories, destroying enemies even as their own ships were torn apart. Lieutenant Walker led the main attack in his hybrid fighter. He pushed his ship beyond all safety limits, using every trick he had learned from both human and alien technology. Enemy fire tore pieces off his fighter, but he kept flying and shooting. "Come on, you metal bugs," he shouted as he destroyed enemy after enemy. "Is that all you've got?" Behind him, alien pilots fought with a courage that amazed even themselves. The Zephyrian pilots used their natural grace to dodge attacks that should have killed them. The builder pilots flew ships that could repair damage faster than the enemies could cause it. The singer pilots coordinated attacks through harmonies that turned chaos into deadly music. The sacrifice worked. The Void Swarm concentrated on the attacking force, creating a gap in their formation just as Tony had predicted. Admiral Morrison led a small group of fast ships through the gap, racing toward the control unit before the enemy could react. His ship took heavy damage, but Chief Engineer Kim kept it flying through repairs that seemed to defy physics. "Almost there," Jake shouted as the giant control unit filled his screen. It was a massive thing, covered in sensors and communication equipment. "All ships concentrate fire on that target." The remaining ships opened fire with everything they had. Human plasma cannons, alien energy beams, and hybrid weapons all struck the control unit at the same time. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the giant creature began to shake and spark. Its communication signals became wild and random. And all across the battlefield, the millions of Void Swarm units suddenly stopped moving. "Did we do it?" someone asked over the radio. For several long seconds, nothing happened. Then, one by one, the mechanical creatures began to drift apart. Without the central brain to coordinate them, they were just simple machines with no purpose. The battle for Haven was over. Lieutenant Walker's damaged fighter limped back to the station. He had lost his weapons, his shields, and half his engine power, but he was alive. Around him, the survivors of both fleets began the slow process of rescue and recovery. "How many did we lose?" Jake asked quietly. 30% of our ships," came the answer. "But we saved Haven Station. We saved 4 billion alien lives." As Jake looked out at the drifting remains of the Void Swarm, he realized something important had happened. Humans and aliens had fought together, died together, and won together. They were no longer separate species helping each other. They had become something new. They had become a family willing to die for each other, and that made them stronger than any enemy could ever be. 6 months after the battle for Haven, President Helen Carter stood before the largest gathering of species in galactic history. The Great Assembly Hall on New Harmony Station could hold representatives from 100 different worlds, and today, it was completely full. Helen looked out at the crowd of humans and aliens sitting together. Zephyrians with their colorful wings sat next to human soldiers still wearing bandages from recent battles. Builder representatives shared tables with human engineers, their rock-like hands working together on shared projects. It was a sight that would have been impossible to imagine just 1 year ago. "Friends," Helen began, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall, "we gather today not as separate species, but as partners in something greater than ourselves. We gather as the Galactic Defense Alliance." The applause was thunderous. Human voices mixed with alien sounds of approval in a harmony that had never existed before. In the front row, Admiral Jake Morrison sat next to High Counselor Nimrith, both of them smiling at how far they had all come. The formation of the alliance had not been easy. After the victory at Haven Station, there had been long debates about what should happen next. Some humans wanted to take control, believing their military success gave them the right to lead. Some aliens wanted to return to their old, peaceful ways, hoping the danger was over forever. But wise voices on both sides had prevailed. General Danny Rodriguez, now promoted to Alliance Supreme Commander, had spent months traveling between worlds to help create a new structure that honored both human strength and alien wisdom. "We're not conquering anyone," Danny had explained during the negotiations. "We're not replacing their governments or changing their cultures. We're just making sure they never have to face another Void Swarm alone." The result was something unique in galactic history. The Alliance combined human military leadership with alien scientific advancement. Each member world kept its own government and culture, but they all contributed to a shared defense force that could protect the galaxy from future threats. Lieutenant Tony Walker, now promoted to commander, led the first graduating class of the Alliance Space Academy. The academy was built on a moon between human and alien space, and it accepted students from every member species. Today, you become something new, Tony told the young graduates. You're not just human pilots or alien navigators, you're guardians of peace for everyone who wants to live free from fear. The graduating class was amazing to see. Human cadets stood proudly next to Zephyrian flight specialists, builder engineers, Singer communications officers, and Watcher tactical coordinators. They had learned from each other, trained together, and formed friendships that crossed species lines. Kesimar had become the Academy's first alien instructor. The young Zephyrian who had once been terrified of violence now taught advanced combat tactics to students from a dozen different worlds. His classes were always full because he understood both the alien need for peace and the human necessity of strength. Fighting is not about anger or hatred, he would tell his students. Fighting is about love. Love for the people you protect, love for the worlds you defend, and love for the peace you want to preserve. Dr. Lisa Park ran the Alliance Research Institute, where human and alien scientists worked together on projects that amazed both species. They had developed new technologies that combined human innovation with alien knowledge, creating tools that neither species could have imagined alone. The medical advances were particularly impressive. Alien healing techniques combined with human surgical knowledge had eliminated most diseases and injuries that had once been fatal. Soldiers who would have died in old wars now recovered completely and returned to their families. But the most important research was focused on prevention. The Institute spent most of its time looking for signs of new threats, studying dangerous phenomena in deep space, and developing early warning systems that would prevent future disasters. Engineer Sam Chen had become the Alliance's chief technology officer. He divided his time between upgrading existing equipment and developing entirely new types of ships and weapons. The latest Alliance vessels were marvels that used the best ideas from every member species. "Look at this beauty," Sam said to Rachel, Kim as they toured the construction bay where the newest Alliance flagship was being built. The ship was enormous, covered in both armor and gardens, with weapon systems that could destroy enemies and medical bays that could heal friends. Rachel, now the Alliance's head of engineering, ran her hand along the ship's hull. It was made from human steel reinforced with alien crystals, creating metal that was stronger than either species had achieved alone. "It's not just a warship," she said admiringly. "It's a symbol. It shows that we can create beautiful things even when we're preparing for ugly possibilities." The Deep Space Patrol had become the Alliance's most visible symbol. Mixed crews of humans and aliens explored the dangerous regions of the galaxy, looking for threats before they could grow large enough to destroy worlds. Commander Tony Walker led Patrol Squadron 7, one of the most successful teams in the service. His crew included humans, Zephyrians, builders, singers, and watchers, all working together like parts of a single organism. "Contact on long-range sensors," reported sensor specialist Vexana, a watcher whose large eyes could see details that human instruments missed. "Unknown ships in the Kepler Nebula." "Hostile or friendly?" Tony asked. "Unknown, but they're not responding to our communications." This was exactly the kind of situation the patrol had been created to handle. Instead of waiting for a threat to develop, they investigated potential problems early and tried to solve them peacefully. The unknown ships turned out to be refugees from a distant part of the galaxy, fleeing from some disaster in their home system. The patrol crews helped them find safe worlds to settle on and provided supplies for their journey. It was the kind of mission that made everyone proud to wear the Alliance uniform. Back on Earth, children learned about the Alliance in their schools. They studied the different alien species with the same curiosity they showed for different human cultures. Many of them dreamed of joining the Alliance when they grew up, not to become warriors, but to become protectors. On alien worlds, young beings learned human history alongside their own. They read about human wars and human peace, about human failures and human triumphs. They learned that strength without wisdom was dangerous, but wisdom without strength was helpless. Ambassador Zethkalar, now serving as the Alliance's first Diplomatic Corps commander, often visited schools on different worlds. The children always asked him the same question. Are humans really as scary as the old stories say? Humans can be the most frightening beings in the galaxy, he would answer. Honestly. But only if you try to hurt the people they care about. If you're their friend, if you need their help, if you're in danger and have nowhere else to turn, then humans become the most wonderful beings you could ever meet. The alliance was not perfect. There were still disagreements between species, still problems to solve, still threats to face. Pirates attacked merchant ships in remote systems. Natural disasters struck worlds that needed help. Ancient weapons were sometimes discovered that could threaten entire star systems. But now, when these problems arose, no one faced them alone. President. Carter often walked through New Harmony Station's observation decks, watching the mixed fleets of human and alien ships that patrolled the local systems. The ships moved together in formations that looked like dances, each species contributing its own strengths to the common defense. Do you think we did the right thing? She asked Admiral Morrison during one of these walks. Jake watched a group of young Alliance officers sharing a meal in the station's central plaza. Humans and aliens sat together, laughing at shared jokes and planning their next missions. Some of them bore scars from the battle for Haven, but all of them looked forward to the future with hope instead of fear. A year ago, the aliens were dying and we were alone, he said. Now we have friends among the stars and they have guardians who will never let them face extinction again. Yeah, I think we did the right thing. In the distance, a new class of ships was departing for patrol duty in the outer systems. The crews were mixed, the technology was advanced, and the mission was simple. Keep the peace, protect the innocent, and make sure that no one in the galaxy ever had to face their darkest hour alone. The desperate aliens no longer watched in fear. Now they watched in pride as their human partners continued to answer every call for help that came from the darkness between the stars. And in return, the humans had learned that the greatest victory was not conquering enemies, but making friends, who would stand with you no matter what came next. The galaxy was safer, not because one species had become dominant, but because many species had learned to care for each other. That was worth fighting for. That was worth dying for. And most importantly, that was worth living for.